Are you suspicious of leadership experts? I mean, I certainly am. And that's why I'm making this short video to help you have some basis to answer the question, why should I listen to anything this guy says? And, I think the suspicion is well justified. I mean, if you go into Barnes and Noble and they have many books on leadership, and you pick a book at random, in my experience, about 2/3 of the books aren't worth reading. In fact, let me tell you the plot line for 2/3 of the leadership books on the market today. It's four ideas. The first one is it spends time establishing I'm amazing. And then it talks about this is what I did. And then they spend time saying, and if you should do the same things because then, idea number 4, you'll be like me, who is amazing. So there's just simply a lot of nonsense. And in my sort of anecdotal experience, almost every engineer I've met has some story about a ridiculous leadership consultant. All right, so why are they ridiculous? What is the mechanism? And I think it really boils down to two things. So the first thing is a lot of these people confuse correlation with causation. Now, most engineers kind of get that. Correlation does not imply causation. Sunburns and ice cream sales are highly correlated. And I don't know anybody who says sunburns cause ice cream consumption or ice cream consumption causes sunburns. Instead, there is a third factor, which we generally call summer. So what these people don't realize is, so they're leading an organization. The organization succeeds, and they say, therefore, I'm a good leader. And the problem is they fail to consider a very important and somewhat horrifying idea that if you're leading an organization and the organization is successful, the success of that organization might not be because of you. In fact, the success of that organization might be in spite of you. See, the fact that your organization succeeded does not mean it's because of you. And that's where a lot of these books go wrong. Now, the second thing they do is fail to establish generalizability. So the fact that doing one thing in one context will generalize to other contexts, that just doesn't hold. So let me give you an idea. A lot of football coaches yell at their players. And if you yell at linebackers, they might get angry and tackle harder, and then you have a better football team. But I have yet to meet any engineer who will tell you that if you yell at him, he'll be able to think more clearly. So all that is to say, there is a lot of nonsense. So then let's get back to the original question. So who is this guy? So what it is I earned my bachelor's and master's degrees from UC Irvine in the early 80s. And for the last 37 years, I've been developing and helping other people develop software that controls mechanical, medical, and airborne systems. So along the way of those 37 years, I've been in various leadership roles at all different levels, and probably for about 27 of those years, I've been in, I've just simply been doing the work of not only an engineer, but also of leading engineers. And, I've never been the kind of leader that, sort of is detached and very much of a hands-on leader. In terms of my story, probably the most interesting part of the story is that in 2006, I banded together with a handful of other folks, and we did a startup that today is known as Tandem Diabetes Care. So, to fully frame that, when I joined Tandem, the entire company fit in my boss's Toyota Camry. Today, we have, about 300,000 people on our pumps. We have well over 2,000 employees. And last time I checked, we had a market capitalization north of $8 billion. So I've had this sort of unicorn experience of, 16 years ago, it was five guys goofing around in evenings and weekends, and all of a sudden, we're this real company. You can check some of those figures for yourself. We're traded on NASDAQ. The symbol is TNDM, Tandem Diabetes Care. The other relevant part of this story is in 2014, I decided to go back to school and earn a PhD studying engineers and how best to lead them. And the idea was, at Tandem, I had some real success leading engineers, and I started to wonder, was it a fluke? Was it, to what extent was it we had great people, we were going to succeed despite me, or what part I played in that? And so I went back to school to get this PhD, and really tried to get to the bottom of how to understand engineering and understand the research, and really, kind of get the credentials. So, and what is, to be clear, a PhD really only means two things. So one thing it means is that I'm familiar with the body of research. So that degree implies that I know what's been studied, I know what's been written. To fully frame that, every time I'd read an article, these days most articles are online, I would just drop the article in a folder. And so I know how many articles I read. So I read about 1,300 journal articles on just all aspects of leadership. The other thing a PhD implies is that you know how to add to that body of research. So I've had several papers published and so on. But to be completely transparent, that PhD does not in any way imply that I'm a good leader. And the truth of the matter is I'm somewhere in the middle. There's some things I do very well, and there's some things that, could be better. But what I do claim is I have lenses to look at things. So as an engineer, especially if you've had, say, 10 or more years experience, you've certainly had the situation where there's something that you're really, that's in your wheelhouse, that you're an expert on. And there's some new grad or somebody who's not even an engineer, and they're like, well, why don't you just do this? And they'll say something really obvious, and they'll say a solution that you ruled out almost instantly. And the issue is, they only know one thing. Like they have one single idea to evaluate that, well, clearly you're going to do this. And as an engineer with 10 years experience, you've got all these experiences, and you kind of, when you make a decision, you're thinking about 15 different things. And that's kind of the idea of getting this PhD is, I can look at things and I can apply different methods, and I simply have more lenses to look at a situation. Again, it still doesn't mean I'm right, but that's my credential. So it's this combination of doing it for 37 years. I've experienced what it's like to be an engineer, and then I've studied leadership, and it turns out there's not a whole lot of literature on leading engineers, and a lot of it that exists today is for me. Now, to be clear, there's a lot of research on managing engineers, but in my mind, leadership and management are two entirely different ideas. Managers are interested in eliminating chaos, where leaders are interested in motivating their people and setting direction and sort of doing the right thing. So, at any rate, hopefully that helps. That's who I am. And what my mission now is. I've learned all this stuff, and I tell you what, I wish I knew 37 years ago what I knew today. I mean, I simply just didn't know much, and when I got thrust into management, really against my will, I just was drowning. And the idea is to try to help the next engineer who gets thrown into the deep end of the pool, to kind of give them some ideas, to help them think right, to direct them to some books to read and whatnot. And all the books I read then are I'm not going to recommend a book that doesn't align with the research. So that 2/3 of the books that aren't worth reading, I'm not going to recommend any of those. The ones I'm going to recommend are the ones that, really align with the science. At any rate, hey, hopefully that helps. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.